Hey guys, so welcome back. It's over. The South Korean presidential election of 2022 now has a winner, and we have the conservative People's Power Party candidate and now president-elect Yoon Seok-yeol going to take office in May 2022, so just in a few months. So what does this mean for South Korea and the world? Let's break it down, because this was a really razor-thin victory, and the drama is not going to stop. There was an extremely high voter turnout, so even though this was one of the most hated presidential elections with candidates that nobody liked, people turned out because they're just concerned on both sides. So we had a turnout of 77.1%. That was only 0.1% shy of the 2017 snap election where, after President Park got impeached, we had that special election, and thereby altering and resetting the number of years that you have to memorize. Every 5 years we have a presidential candidate, but she didn't serve out her term, so she messed up that timeline. So now students from here to infinity have to recalibrate in their minds. Oh yeah, that election happened in 2017. Anyhow, so this victory was by less than 1%. Yoon Seok-yeol won by about 250,000 votes. And here in Korea, yes, it's one person, one vote. They don't have this whole weird electoral college system and things like that. Everybody's vote counts equally. And so he won by a very thin margin. Yoon Seok-yeol won 48.56%. Lee Jae-myung got 47.83%, so that's a difference of 0.73%. So thin, they had to wait until 4 a.m. to really get an accurate result when almost all of the ballots were counted. There were 12 presidential candidates. Of course, as we've covered here, An Cheol-soo dropped out and merged candidacies with Yoon Seok-yeol, and it is believed that a majority of his votes went to Yoon Seok-yeol, but not all of them, and it was maybe more like a 60-40 type of split. Also, Shim Sang-jung, where An Cheol-soo's votes could have also gone to, she did fare as expected with 2.37%, so she's probably going to still stay in the National Assembly. I mean, she is probably the one that I would say won in terms of leaving the election with respect, and she can hold her head up high, but she's probably really discouraged at the number. But I don't think you should, girl, because you should have probably expected that. But she is somebody who should stay on definitely in Korean politics, because now we're entering a Yoon presidency. And what is that going to mean, especially when he does not have a strong mandate from the people? Yes, he did cross 40%. So you gotta get 40% or more to have a legitimate mandate from the people. So he did do that. But it's an extremely divided populace. It's literally could have been anybody's game. And it seems as if we're going to have what I predict is going to be a bit of a weakened presidency, which actually might be a good thing domestically, but I think if I could give some advice to the new Yoon administration, focus more on your international role, because it's a conservative party as well. Focus on our alliances, defense, put more of your energy into being the global Korean president rather than getting mixed up in all of the domestic fights, because right now the legislature is still controlled by the opposition, the Democratic Party. And so they're going to railroad anything, and they're going to be more focused on domestic issues. Of course, as the president of South Korea, he should not ignore the people and their welfare. But this is how I hope he would go about this. I think this would be the smartest move. He was a prosecutor, the prosecutor general, the highest prosecutor in the land, and that gave him some street cred. A lot of street cred. Actually, if it weren't for that, he wouldn't be where he is right now, despite all the shamanism and probably the witch kind of stuff that his wife did, probably to get into the Blue House. But because he's not, I think, going to be able to be extremely successful in pushing through his domestic policies, I think in this case, my advice is actually aimed, even though I said for Yoon Seok-yeol, to the civil society of Korea. I think this is a chance for the people of South Korea to finally realize they don't have to depend on the president for everything, as in like, oh, that's our emperor, if he doesn't make it happen, then there's no chance that we can ever do anything in our lives to change society. Because we are moving towards a direction, I believe, where hopefully with more democracy, you have more decentralized power. And what I think Yoon Seok-yeol can do, and because he's going to appoint the new prosecutor general and have some say a lot in who actually makes up his cabinet and advisors, I think he should probably try to empower decentralized command as much as possible for domestic policy. That way he's not the target. Like people love, basically blaming the president for everything because the president has so much outsized power in Korea. If he can early on say that, look, okay, we are going to empower the people, and by empowering the people, I think what he can do that is in his wheelhouse that he can understand is actually giving more support and power to whistleblowers. Let the people govern themselves. Let the market govern themselves, but create a free and transparent atmosphere by empowering people to speak up when there is something wrong. And we have seen more people take on a brave stance. We saw it in the Me Too movement, which actually in Korea started with a prosecutor who was being sexually harassed. She sparked the Me Too movement in Korea, and this is a chance for his wife to also make amends and pay some penance by basically being caught on tape. Remember, like in a different video I covered, talking to a reporter saying that, oh yeah, well, we don't really have a Me Too movement here because we're good at paying off our girls, except the liberals are too cheap, and that's why they're in trouble. And so I think what can happen is if you allow the people to just do their own job themselves, you can get out of a lot of domestic skirmishes, but you really have to empower the protection of whistleblowers and empower the protection of what they can get and incentivize it. There is absolutely no incentive right now in Korea to be a whistleblower unless you are extremely mad and you're out for revenge and you have nothing to lose. Then you get a fighter. But before it gets to that dramatic state, why not have an organized system where people can freely speak up and improve things as they go along before it gets into some big old drama and you have people like doing their protests and lighting themselves on fire and just doing all sorts of stuff because of the injustice. If you, as the new president, can empower the laws to give an incentive to whistleblowers, I guarantee you that a lot of your headaches will go away. A lot of the target on your back will be erased because you're going to have civil society take care of itself. And I have seen this firsthand when I worked for a Korean company. And so political, but the CEO is essentially appointed by the president, and he had some issues, so he had to resign, and we had a lot of gaps where we did not have a president leading the company. Now, we call it a parachute president because these people come from, this was a broadcasting company, and he had like no broadcasting experience. He was basically like a law professor. They like to choose all these people who have absolutely no experience within the actual company. And so when we did not have a president, sorry to say, when we did not have a CEO of that company, the company did well. It was growing. People were making their own decisions based on what was best for the department, the programming. The company actually grew better without some sort of like, fly-by-night person that they dropped in, because this person that drops in has to do all of this kind of like czar-like thing, like the emperor with no clothes. They're not going to get accurate reports from their subordinates who have been there forever, because they're all trying to like now play a game of politics rather than actually work for growth, innovation, and sustainability for the company. And this person has to basically make his mark, so he's doing all sorts of strange projects that are just good for him politically and his political future. So, what I'm saying is that Korean people can take good care of themselves if you give them the proper safeguards and incentives. And I think as a former prosecutor, Mr. President-elect Yoon, I think you can actually usher this in so that now Korean people can unleash the talent, the drive, all of the innovation that they would like. It makes absolutely no sense for you to be able to be expected to fix every problem. I think the one critical error that we did not fix from the Seoul ferry incident is to address the fact that a boat sinking on the end of your country had to be resolved by the president of South Korea. I mean, that's kind of like, if like the water is leaking in your apartment, you need to get the mayor to fix it. But the reason there was, yes, we uncovered the corruption, but essentially it's this long-standing practice of not allowing the official. So in that case, behind the scenes, what most likely was happening was that the ferry company had so much power within the actual ministries and then the Coast Guards that they were able to block anybody from acting because they didn't want it on their record. Like once you have these like blights on your record, it makes it tough. So it looked like there was a battle between like, oh no. The company is gonna try to fix this on their own. They're gonna send in their own people, but they only had like 2 hours to fix it before the boat went down, but they didn't know that. They thought that maybe they had like all the time in the world. As the boat was sinking, even the people from the Blue House and the Park administration was asking for more video footage and coverage so that they can, make a decision. And then you had like the whole emperor without his clothes situation where the people were like, yeah, okay, we'll send it to you. Yeah, it's okay right now. We've saved everybody. Yeah, it's fine. When people were stuck in there, they didn't save hardly anybody. And the boat is basically all sunken down. All those people lost their lives. And yet they're like, okay, we'll send you the helicopter video footage so you can make a decision. By then it was too late. The president was MIA. And why was the president the only one who could fix that situation? Because she could actually break the stalemate and force the government to do its job by sending in the Coast Guard to save the people. But they were just sitting there looking at the boat sinking. All right, let's get back to the election. So, who won the election for Yoon Seok-yeol? Well, apparently, women in their 30s and men and women in their 40s and 50s favored Lee Jae-myung. The people that really preferred Yoon Seok-yeol were men in their 30s and men and women in their 60s. So the conservative faction, when they're older, most likely, sure, yeah, that'll go towards the conservatives. But here we're seeing that it really did play out. They really did analyze the electorate this time, and they knew the 20s and 30s would be the swing voters, whichever way they went. So the men in their 30s really went for Yoon Seok-yeol, and these are the disgruntled men who are probably feeling like this world has become so unfair. I'm not able to do what my father did, and even if it was misogynistic, like have the unfair advantages in the workplace and have housing so that I could finally get married. Because in Korea, if you want to get married, you got to have a house by the time you're only 30, like you've only worked for like 5 years or something because of the military service. How you're supposed to do that, I don't know. How a president can solve that, I don't know. That's why I'm saying that Korean people should probably be empowered to fix their own problems. The self-employed also been battered by the restrictions with the pervasive virus, and also the policies set by the liberal government favored Yoon. The middle class, though, favored more of Lee Jae-myung. So like I said, this is a very thin margin. So that is essentially the voting populace. By region, it came out pretty much as expected, and the Jeollado province has historically always been the liberal side, and so that went according to expectations. And then also the Gyeongsang-do side is usually going towards the conservatives, but there was still more of a fracture there. So people are saying that, wow, that Yoon Seok-yeol, like, he didn't really kind of bring in this landslide even with that kind of built-in advantage. Now, An Chol-soo, yes, the only thing that we can kind of gauge from is exit polls on where his votes went. And it looks like An Chol-soo's votes did go to Yoon Seok-yeol more than Lee Jae-myung, but that's not a very, we'll never know. But what we did see from the polling is that a lot of An Chol-soo supporters wanted a change in the government, so therefore that would favor more towards Yoon Seok-yeol. But that's why this merger was a little bit more kind of a gamble and a closer call, because it wasn't guaranteed that all of An Chol-soo's voters would go to Yoon Seok-yeol, but it looked like enough did and moved the needle a bit. So overall, how do I feel? I feel that actually we dodged a bullet by not having Lee Jae-myung, because that would have been a scary situation, even though I'm worried about the social policies that are going to come out of Yoon Seok-yeol and the growing misogynistic climate that he would empower in order to, get into office. But I don't want to live in a country where people mysteriously go missing or suddenly are not in this world anymore. And I do not want to be seeing scam after scam after scam, basically under the guise of a government program that's supposed to help the people. I think that we do need to continue that investigation with this land scandal, because I think he did cross a red line where essentially he is willing, it looks like, to just throw away other people's lives to save himself. I do feel sorry for the Subway franchisees, because they're not going to be getting orders of hundreds of sandwiches charged to the government anymore, but the wife can do that on her own now, and she can probably find a way to maybe make sandwiches at home. So just on the domestic front, reason why I think like he should probably not really get too involved is that when this Moon government right now tried to have a heavy hand in trying to orchestrate and control, kind of like a control economy, he messed up the real estate market. So it looks like he's going to loosen a lot of these crazy laws that were enacted that actually did the opposite effect and made housing even more unattainable for the people and increased the supply targeted at 20s and 30s first-time home buyers that are going to be a little bit below market price, and then maybe they can sell it back to the government after 5 years, apparently, from one report, with a profit potential of up to 70%. He's going to probably ease loan restrictions and relax regulations in the rental market. We need to have this market flowing again. And instead of handouts, like the way that Lee Jae-myung promised, just kind of like throwing money around without doing the actual budgeting, most likely he's going to try to create more jobs and then also increase the level of economic activity by small and medium-sized enterprises who actually employ like 80% of South Korea. You know, these big conglomerates like Samsung, LG, Hyundai, they hire less than 20% of South Korea's population. Small and medium-sized enterprises are what fuel the income of South Koreans. So it's very important that that also has top priority. However, I think where Yoon Seok-yeol can be extremely beneficial and effective is in foreign policy. I think he is going to fulfill his campaign pledge of strengthening our alliances, particularly our trilateral security alliance with the United States and Japan. Here's a pop quiz to try to illustrate this point that I think really starts to give you a sense of a bit of the like hoops we always have to jump with our alliances on a case-by-case basis, or our feelings about other neighbors, if they're frenemies or allies. So here's a pop quiz. Hypothetically, totally hypothetically, if Japan were to invade North Korea, who does South Korea team up with and support? Now, you would be surprised. There are a lot of Koreans who would actually say like, oh, we have to help defend North Korea, because Japan in the past few years has really become more of a foe in a lot of Korean people's eyes. But And then also the Moon administration has been extremely friendly with North Korea, trying to even declare the end of war. Now, the thing is that even like when I was giving that pop quiz, I had to think, and I was like, oh, okay. I had to think like, oh, no. It has to be Japan, because we are in a military alliance with Japan, South Korea, and the United States. But even I had to have like a neuron flip on and be like, no, yeah, we have to align with Japan. Now, there is a whole controversy in Korea about the conservative right, especially the far right, being former, basically, Japan vassals. During the Japanese occupation, a lot of the people who kind of like sold out Korea and then were like, you know, as if like if there's like Ukrainians who are like, selling out to Russia, sort of like that. There were a lot of people who benefited from that situation. A lot of the property came down from that. A lot of people starting businesses came down from that. And there's a lot of continuous strong ties among the business elite with Japan that rubs people the wrong way, in almost to the level of like, treason and stuff like that. But that relationship with Japan is extremely important to South Korea, because a lot of technology transfers comes from Japan. Korean businesses don't like to admit this publicly, but a lot of our components, a lot of things that we need for our high tech actually come from Japan. And now when we're looking at China with greater distrust, I think we have to start making sure that we balance out our portfolio of international diplomacy and business relations. Yes, China is essentially Korea's largest market, I still believe, in terms of exports. we still definitely have to maintain great relations with China, but in any negotiation, you have to come in with some leverage, and if you have a better friend with Japan, you can have better leverage, and then you can work it off the other way. If you have better relations with China, then you can have, more leverage when you're trying to reestablish the friendship with Japan. There still will be some issues over the territorial islets of Dokdo and the comfort women issue, and also confiscating some of the derivatives of, I believe, Mitsubishi, the company here in Korea, basically for wartime crimes that still has not really been resolved. But on the whole, people are looking to a better relationship with Japan under Yoon Seok-yeol. Now, I think the biggest bullet that actually we dodged in this whole thing is maintaining our alliance with the United States under Yoon Seok-yeol. He will be extremely pro South Korea-US relations, strengthen the military alliance, because under the previous government, and then also it would have been a continuation with Lee Jae-myung, it has been a very kind of anti-foreign policy type of posture. They're very focused inside the box in South Korea, which of course we have a lot of problems here that we have to address, a lot of social inequities that we have to address, but we didn't really get much progress on social inequities under Moon Jae-in. Even during the whole campaign, when people were trying to stand up for women's rights, gay rights, people even within the liberal bloc were like, let that go until later. We have to talk about that later, and later never ever comes. So I think what would be more advantageous is that civil society takes this as a good opportunity to have a clear enemy in the Blue House and say that, look, we can't just give it to the president and trust that the president is going to do something. We have to make change ourselves. And I think this will actually strengthen the social movement, because you're going to see a fuddy-duddy, weaker president who is out of touch with the times domestically on those social policies. And I think that should, and I hope, empowers the civil society who wants more social progress and social justice to basically kind of from the beginning be clear, cross out any expectation of support from the Blue House and the president, put that energy into strengthening yourself, and then go out there and fight for social change, especially if you have the legislature. Not that the legislature has done that much either. So civil society really has to basically be like, look, no politician is going to be able to do anything for us. We have to do it ourselves. And I think it's much easier to do that and be strong in that position when you already think that, okay, Blue House, politically, not going to be on our side anyway. Let's go out there and fight, which is, again, why I think Yoon Seok-yeol should probably step away from a lot of domestic policies and focus on the international strength and power of South Korea, strengthen our security alliances, make sure that we have that strong US support, because people were shaking in their boots when Moon Jae-in wanted to declare the end of war with North Korea, and then that would mean there would be greater leverage politically for the extreme left to kick out the United States military presence and have them leave and leave us completely vulnerable. Now, the reason why I say that is that they've been kind of sleeping on the job. Like how they're saying, Russia's military is not really well equipped, and they've just kind of let that go, and that's why they're having a lot of problems with their invasion. We have had decades of trying to build up South Korea's own military and our own ability to fight and defend ourselves, and I would say I wouldn't feel comfortable if South Korea were here all by itself without the support of the US military, because I still don't think we're ready. They're not. I mean, I remember I did a voiceover once for like some sort of equipment for the training video and it was a mess. I'm like, I hope that there's another way, like maybe a good textbook that people can follow, because they're gonna be all punching up all the wrong buttons on this machine. I was just like, oh my god, this is our military. Oh, I'm so scared. Now there's gonna be a problem with that wife, and I'm sorry, Miss Future First Lady, in another video we did call you grown hoe, but yeah, but this is gonna be a big risk, and I think this is also a chance for civil society to basically find a way to sandbox in the wives of the president. It shouldn't matter who the wife is, but in Korea, the wife exerts extreme soft power, or it's not like a first lady, it's more of like the queen, and the queen can basically also by proxy from the king, the president, rule and make all sorts of shenanigans if she wanted to, and we know this one is very prone to be playing her tricks, and especially her mother, from whom she learned it all from, is probably ecstatic now and suddenly probably has been self-cured of her so-called Alzheimer's because she used that excuse to try to like not testify. That woman. So we have to find a way to sandbox in the wives and family of the president so that they do not take advantage and create corruption. I mean, we are not Russia, but like I said, a lot of commonalities, but we are not Russia, and we should not be backsliding into that. The thing that they have going for them, this couple, is that they don't have children, and usually it's the children that create a lot of opportunities again for corruption and justification for corruption and avenues for corruption. So at least we just know that it's going to be the wife, maybe the mother, and whatever other family and friends she has. Who knows? But we really should find a way to structurally limit the way that a wife can basically open up, here's my bank book, just fill it up, and then maybe we could give you some favors. And no shamans in the Blue House. Please, if you want to do that on your own time and on your own personal life. Please do not go to the shaman for our public policy moving forward. That was her plan. Anyhow, so I am hopeful that we are going to see a stronger, internationally minded president. I mean, Yoon Seok-yeol is going to have to do a lot more homework, because on the debate trail, it was really clear that he was a little bit clueless on a lot of international relations. He even had to ask, remember, like, oh yeah, explain that to me, I don't know what you're talking, oh that, okay. So he's gonna have to do a lot of reading, less drinking, more reading, Mr. Yoon, less drinking. And the advantage, though, that he will have is that a lot of the people in the conservative circles have a lot more international diplomacy experience, and they're experts. So he can definitely staff and team up with people who are really well versed in our diplomacy. So I think he should be essentially the cheerleader, the guy who's the, strong kind of stoic front man for South Korea on the global stage. I think he maybe have to brush up on some of his English. I don't think he really speaks English. That's also going to be a little bit of a problem. However, he is at least internationally, I believe, minded, where he really wants to make sure that we have good relations with other countries, strengthen our security defense, and he does have the mindset of, a lot of conservatives. And then also just, I think in the climate that we're in right now, that we need is that just niceties and trust. Can't trust them. You gotta show strength, and you got to back it up with your alliances and your own power. And I think that will definitely help South Korea. and be able to continue to move forward on the domestic front. I think he should try to delegate that, decentralize that, focus on securing South Korea's position in the world. And I think he'll be a much more successful president than if he gets mired in all of the muck in South Korean domestic politics, because we already know there's a lot of drama there. And if he does, we're going to report that, because ain't nothing like more. There's going to be drama coming out of this family, even if they accept my advice, there's going to be a lot of drama. Anyhow, so thanks for watching. How do you guys feel about the results of the election? Leave your comments below, and I'll talk to you next time. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Bye-bye.
Tune in next time. Don't forget to subscribe. Find us on YouTube, Instagram, Twitter, and Facebook. Love you.